to the early United States newscast. Now we will move into the floor talks debate section of the show. Tonight we will be debating the causes and effects of settlement in Texas, the extent slavery will be expanded in this area. We will also be debating the solutions to crisis going on if we can resolve differences between the Mexican and U.S. government, and the two new political parties in the state of Texas, the Peace Party and the War Party. Were they similar to Democrats and Whigs, Federalists, Anti-Federalists, and what were their similarities and differences? All right, debaters, would you like to introduce yourselves?
No.
No?
I think we're good. We can just answer the questions, I guess.
All right. What were the causes and effects of the settlement in Texas?
Well, you see, we'll start off with the cause. Primarily, the cause had been, wow, these Native Americans that have sat next to the territory where, as we've claimed is our land, they just kind of moved in, kind of started ravaging through our towns and cities, just kind of like stealing, pillaging, just kind of ruining us overall. And so we had come up with the idea that if we invite the Americans to our Texas land, then maybe, just maybe, those little people will stop stealing from us and just slaughtering us. And I mean, it worked for the most part. They stopped coming over here. They stopped stabbing our people, stabbing our wives, our kids, our big burly men. That kind of ceased, but then a new problem arrived, the effect. These white Americans came in, they kind of acted like they owned the place. They brought in their evil traditions of slavery. I mean, who are those people, right? Slavery, that's not cool in the slightest bit, really. But they brought it in. We had all these rules, all these laws. They're like, hey, you can live here, just listen to us. And you know what they didn't do? Listen to us. And for the most part, that was the effect.
Great, awesome. Contestant number 2. Is there any solution to the crisis that is going on? And if so, can it resolve the differences
I
in the
edited it
Mexican
without
and
using a
U.S. government?
suggestion to get
Well, Charlie, I have to say, first of all, I love your
No
glasses. Second of all, there's literally no way this crisis can be solved. There's 3 major factors that are causing this crisis that are eventually not going to be solved at all. It's westward expansion, the slavery, and the patriotic actions that the Americans have been giving into Texas. Westward expansion, the Americans are looking for the 3 G's, God, glory, and gold. They're very important to the Americans when trying to expand westward. They want to find and explore new opportunities in the West. They also believe in the religion that this is their God-given right to expand west. They believe this is all of their land going westward. It is, one of those deep beliefs that you cannot change into the Americans, and it'll be very hard for them to give up any land in Texas with the rising conflict. And the constitutions with the Mexican and American government are very different, which leads into the slavery part, which is the Americans support slavery, and their constitution does not really specifically denounce slavery, while the Mexican government does not support slavery. The South really depends on the slaves because of the lack of technology that they have and how much money and the economy brings up in the South. Another thing was that Moses Austin, when he was selling land in Texas, he was pretty much selling land for the guarantee of plantations for slaves in that area. Mostly the Americans dominated the Mexicans in that area. That's why there were so many slaves there too. So that's another reason, causing factor for no solution. But the third one that's really important is the view that the news media has given to the American people that Santa Anna, who is the leader of the Mexican government, has won pretty much key battles that were viewed by the Americans as they were slaughtered. The Americans were slaughtered during these key battles. And what happened was that these Americans thought that this was very unfair, and they needed to come back to Texas and revolt and help the people in Texas take back over the land and help their American citizens out, which they did, rightfully so, which then leads to the question now, should Texas become part of the United States? Martin Van Buren said no, which is rightfully so, because the conflict could also result into a war between Mexico and the United States, which is an non-ending conflict. So that leads to the sticky situation in Texas and why it is never going to recover. So.
Do you want land? Well, of course you do, you greedy imperialist scum. Who wouldn't? Well, for a limited time only, you could get yourself some sweet land. Only now recently offered to by our friends, the Mexican government, who you can take your 6 children and 10 slaves to the wonderful region of Texas. There you can settle with the other Mexican people instead of farms and ranches for half the price you would in America. Here we have an interview with a still living resident who bought land from us yesterday. On our trip to the property we bought, we experienced many hardships. However, the risk was worth the reward. I got plenty of land for such a fair and reasonable price. Thanks, Stephen Austin Land Services. Do you want to grow cash crops? Raise cattle? Who wouldn't? Buy it now while you still can, because they're selling like hotcakes. Oh look, a letter! I always love getting fan mail. Well, this looks like another happy customer, here to give a real and accurate portrayal of the conditions in Texas. Before I read this letter, here at Stephen Austin Land Services, we hope you enjoy the land that we offer and respect the wonderful deals we are now able to give. Now on to the letter. The Native Americans are attacking us. They already killed Margaret. What are we going to do? Well, there's always a few bad eggs in a dozen. Don't let this bad experience discourage you from picking up the pen and sending us a telegram to our offices. I can't stress how good of a deal we have here. And another big thank you to the Mexican government, who allowed us to settle here after just only gaining their independence a couple of years ago. So, run on over. By your horse, train, steamboat, it doesn't matter. Just get here. Because here, talk is cheap and our land is even cheaper. This ad is sponsored by the Mexican government and our glorious new leader, Santa Anna. Without his help, the Mexican government would not be as stable as it is now and allow us the glorious opportunity to settle in Texas. Oh my God. What?
Get down, Mr. Austin! They're coming! The Alamo, it's under siege!
Oh, I don't think so.
What?
Here, in Texas, we don't run. We fight. Remember the Alamo.
You're on your own, Mr. Austin. I'm out of here. Good stuff, contestant 2. Well, let's keep it easy on the what the media says. Don't want people to think we're trying to influence people's opinions. Contestant number 1. To what extent will slavery be expanded in Texas?
Try and get this up before you drown yourself. Well, for the most part, as he said, Americans are overwhelming this land, and so they're bringing all their beliefs, what they've been doing is all just moving into Texas, and because we're being greatly outnumbered, we're also because they have their own slaves as well. They're bringing them in, and there's so many white people. There's so many white Americans. So many. By golly, there's a lot of them. Slavery is just, it's all in right now. And we've made it clear, we don't want slavery here. What are you doing? But for the most part, as it seems like it's playing, as we can predict, because there's so many of these lunatic American people moving in, slavery, for the most part, it's just going to completely overwhelm the land. It's absurd how just they think they can do what they want. They're like, we're the big guys here. It doesn't matter what we do. We can go in. What, are they going to stop us? I mean, they kind of do, but that's besides the point. The point here is that, well, you asked me how expanded they're going to put slavery, how much slavery they're going to stuff into this this territory. And I'm telling you, it's all going downhill, man. This is too much.
Oh God, oh gosh, water. Contestant number 2. You have 2 new political parties in the state: Texas Peace Party and War Party. Were they like the Democrats and the Whigs and the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists? What were their similarities, their differences?
First of all, I just want to say that my contestant here, previously when he was answering that question, it's very sad that white supremacy is taking over Texas.
Yup.
Second of all, question 2, the difference between the Peace Party and the War Party. The Peace Party was looking for like a diplomacy, kind of like negotiations with the Mexicans on the situation. Doesn't want to go into any war, anything like that. They want to negotiate, they want to keep peace and close connections and allies with the Mexicans. And that was led by Stephen Austin. The War Party was kind of like a radicalized idea that independence was a necessary front for them to win. It was a necessary thing to do to preserve slavery down there in Texas, because without the independence from Mexico, there could never be a confirmed strong structure of slavery down there. And that was led by Sam Houston himself. What you asked for the Democrats, Whigs, if they're like them, or the Anti-Federalists, Federalists, you could compare them to both of them. The War Party were like the Democrats and Anti-Federalists. They thought that slavery was not wrong. It was not prohibited in the Constitution, and it was a right that they could have to boost the economy of the United States itself. The Peace Party was like the Whigs and Federalists, since they would not kind of like fight or go out full war with their contradictions with this view on slaves. They would go with diplomacy, like the Missouri Compromise, when you're trying to like go from a slave state to a free state, equally out in the political environment inside the in Congress and in the federal government. Similarities and differences between the two. Both shared a change for some degree. They wanted a change. None of them wanted like nothing to be changed. They wanted to change some way. From like for differences for them was that one wanted to go radicalized, one wanted to go peacefully, like in the name. And the other thing that what the War Party was asking, kind of like, it was literally like civil war. It's literally asking for, it's kind of like if you were to have a civil war between the North and the South, it's kind of like saying a situation like that. Really, this is going to be a causing factor, possibly, for the United. If we have a conflict like this between inside and internally in the United States, this would be a very bad foreshadowing of possibly what could be to come.
That's going to do it for tonight's Floor Talk. We'll see you next week when I hopefully have a desk that's better than my backpack.